Hi students, this is week 34, April 28th through May 5th, and the learning objectives are 1. I can submit my final Y equals MX+B book project. So you've done drafts of chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. You've also done the introduction before we went on break, and a table of contents and a cover page. By May 5th, make sure you turn in every single one of those things together. The cover page, introduction, table of contents, chapters 1 through 3. Second learning objective is I can watch the weekly video lesson for common errors. So it's very important that you watch this video because we're going to highlight what are some of the most common mistakes students are making in their project. So you have one assignment only this week. There is no K-back this week. The assignment is your final Y equals MX+B book project. This book is worth 100 points and due next week on May 5th. To take attendance, the question of the week, and make sure you post on Google Hangouts. What did you do this weekend? So you can find Google Hangouts on the spreadsheet, but once again, the question of the week is, what did you do this weekend? Please answer that question. So I want to highlight some of the common errors in the project. And some of the common errors include the following: mixing up M and B, writing y over x instead of change in y over change in x. Because when we're talking about slope, we're talking about the change in y over the change in x, not y over x. When graphs are unlabeled, that makes it very difficult to give feedback because we can't tell if you're doing it right or wrong. Missing or unclear slope triangles. So not drawing slope triangles, or that slope triangles don't make sense. Incorrect points. Your points that you graphed are not correct. Not properly explaining how M and B are used in the table graphing equation. I'll show you some examples of what that looks like. And not watching the video. If you watch the video, a lot of your questions and your ability to explain will be answered just by watching the video. So let's highlight some student mistakes by looking at some sample work. So confusion over M. This student said, I added 1 on the x-axis and subtracted 4 on the y-axis and have a slope of 10. So that doesn't make sense if you're talking about change in y over change in x. Your change in y was -4 and your change in x is 1. It cannot be possible if your change in y is -4, and your change in x is 1, and your slope becomes 10. That doesn't make sense. Also, there's confusion over b. The student said b is 10. It appears in the equation as 10, but in the table, the 10 does not appear for b. So the table is not correct, or the equation is not correct, because they don't match. The equation and the table do not match. It's important to draw your slope triangles and label your points. So this student believes that all these points appear on the graph. Well, if we draw slope triangles in, you can recognize that some of these points don't actually fit on this line. So when you draw your slope triangles, you can count what the change in y over the change in x is, each point, and then see which one is not correct, because some of these points are not correct. So please draw your slope triangles. Lack of explanations. So when you are turning your final book project, the level of explanation needed is very similar to when we do verbal quizzes in class where I spin the pen. When I spin the pen, I ask you, can you please explain everything you understand? When you explain in 1 to 2 sentences, it doesn't really show me a deep level of understanding. You need to be able to explain it to the level of where I can clearly see what you do understand and what you do not understand yet. So explaining in 1 to 2 sentences is not going to cut it, especially for this book. Here's an example of 2 different students' work. One earned a revise for chapter 2 and the other earned an A for chapter 2. This student did all this math and wrote, looks like 2 sentences to explain all the math they did. That is enough explanations to explain what you did step by step. On the other hand, this student, here are the 2 problems that the student did, and they explained in paragraphs what they did step by step and color coded, so it makes it a lot more clear. So once again, you cannot expect to explain a chapter in a few sentences. Expect to write multiple paragraphs to show your level of understanding. Speaking of which, one of the things that I know that if I know that you're not watching the video is if you're not identifying the word of the week. This week's word of the week is explain clearly. Once again, the word of the week is explain clearly. I chose those two words, explain clearly, because quite a few students are not explaining the work clearly. And with that said, I can tell if you're not watching the video because when we look at feedback, when we look at student work and we give feedback, each one of these definitions, proportional, steepness, parallel, perpendicular, are all incorrect. If you watch the video, I explain what proportional means, what steepness looks like, what parallel looks like, what perpendicular looks like. So please make sure you're watching the video.